Now we're going to look at a topic which a lot of our panelists in previous discussions have mentioned briefly, but now we're going to break into it a little bit more, and that is DeFi. There is a huge potential in this. It's definitely been one of the buzzwords of 2020 and something that a lot of our panelists have said to keep an eye out for. So I'm really excited to bring you our next panel discussion hosted by Jesus Rodriguez from Into the Block.
Peering into $13 trillion on crypto exchanges with Felix Mago, co-founder at Dashnext, Miko Matsumura, co-founder at Evercoin.
All right, hello, and thank you for joining us in this session. So I have the privilege of being here with Miko Matsumura and Felix Mago, and we're going to talk about the intricacies of crypto exchanges and some interesting insights, some interesting perspective about the development of crypto exchanges and their role in the crypto market. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm the CEO of Into the Block. We focus on providing market intelligence by using data science and trying to extrapolate intel from everything that happens at the blockchain level, at the exchange level, at the derivative level. So exchanges are a topic very close to my heart these days. But before starting, I would like to let my two panelists introduce themselves. So Miko, we know each other for 15 years or something, but I think this is the first time that I get the opportunity of hammer you at a conference. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, it's terrific. Really appreciate it. And, it's great to be hanging out with you here. So in terms of my introduction, I'm a co-founder of an exchange, Evercoin Exchange, and it's mobile wallet-based non-custodial exchange. And it's sort of the most, we say it's the most secure mobile wallet and exchange. So that's Evercoin. And then I also deploy capital out of a venture capital fund called Gumi Cryptos Capital. And, we look for exciting projects. So that's me in a
And because
nutshell.
you're a modest person and you're not gonna say it, I'm gonna say it. I known you for a long time, and you have had a remarkable career across different technical industries, from the service-oriented architecture days to the cloud days to the big data days, and now crypto. So it's
Thanks so
whatever
much.
industry you guys, whatever industry you start working on, I should just follow, and I think I'm gonna do okay.
Thank you so
Felix,
much.
how about yourself? Tell us about you and Dashnext.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. So I'm Felix Mago, co-founder of Dashnext. Dashnext is one of the many projects within the Dash ecosystem, and we are based here in Asia. I'm out of Bangkok tonight. And what we're doing is partnerships, business development, marketing for Dash. So we are onboarding merchants on all verticals of the payment industry. My background also very much from the consulting side of things. I was a bank and finance consultant before, helped them to become more digital. That went so, as you can see, with many banks and paper-based processes. So now I'm very happy. I'm focusing for the last more than 5 years now in the blockchain space, very much focused on crypto payments and on mass adoption. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of funny that we're sitting here 2020 and still talking about that the main use case is exchanges in cryptocurrency, whereas we have so many cool projects that are actually doing real world stuff and real businesses. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. We have two perspectives: a wallet provider and an anti-exchange person. So let's start with sort of a polemic topic. In a few years ago, everybody wanted to have a wallet, be a wallet provider. A few years after that, everyone wanted to build an exchange. These days, I get the feeling that the lines between those two are blurring a little bit, that the wallets are looking more like exchanges, and centralized exchanges are providing services that look more like wallet providers. So Miko, as an operator in a sort of, let's say, next generation wallet provider, how do you see the lines between those two and the future?
Well, I think the thing that is really, I think, fundamental is that, we're talking about open source financial infrastructure, and we're talking about essentially the migration of users towards a much more inclusive and consent-based financial infrastructure. So in order for that to happen, we basically need to, right now what's happening is there's sort of an existential battle between people who are recreating the centralized financial system, and those who are sort of paving a new way. And I think the thing that's funny about it is when you think about the creation of an alternative, a true alternative, I think it's really based on use cases, right? So I mean, I think to highlight this, one of the things you're probably able to see from Into the Block is you're probably able to see kind of record amounts of Bitcoin actually being pulled off of the exchanges and into wallets, right? So, the thing that's, I think, very interesting about that is that as that movement strengthens, you start to get HODL, and, a concept that I kind of coined this morning when I got out of bed, which I call hedgel. Which are kind of really primary use cases, right? And I think there's even a third primary use case, which is kind of interest and kind of interest-bearing crypto, whether it's centralized or decentralized. So, my thoughts are that, historically, those forces are kind of pitted against just pure speculation. And pure speculation is what you see when you see the whales jumping in and out and you see this pumping and dumping effect, and I think those two forces are kind of like pressing against one another in this time.
Felix, could you complement that? How do you see the lines between wallets and exchanges in the future?
Yeah, for me, it's also very much about use cases. I can only agree with what Miko just said. For me, also coming from the side who's doing adoption and who's trying to convince regular merchants that are completely non-crypto, that are in fact, don't really care about crypto, never looked into it. And we're talking with so many merchants, and the most common question is, do I have to invest anything? Do I have to take any risk? And how can I be sure that tomorrow half of the money is not lost, right? So for us, it's a very key factor to really find fiat on off-ramps. And in order to do that, you have to comply with local regulations, with local governments. And this is exactly why we also need blockchain intel, to provide data, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's nice to dream along and to be we revolutionize everything. But at the end of the day, if you want to do real business and if you want to drive real adoption, you always come sooner or later to the point that you have to integrate in classic systems. So, it's for us really.
So let me press a little bit on that. Let me press a little bit on that point. Are wallets going to be a concept a few years from now, or they're just going to be hidden behind other things and just being like a key infrastructure point that you use and nobody cares about how they work internally?
Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely pro financial freedom and absolutely pro have your own finances, do whatever you want. It's like, it's your money, it's your choice. This is like kind of our claim as well. So I'm completely pro with it, right? But for me, it's about giving users choices. And we're 2020, and I was just joking with Miko. We are 2020. Everybody's talking for over a decade now on, hey, we can buy now stuff with cryptocurrency. The only use case is you can trade it and you can speculate with it, right? For me, want to drive this digital cash and want to drive like real mass adoption, to go out buy a hamburger tonight, right? To go out buy my next hotel room with cryptocurrency or Dash or whatever it is, right? We're still so far away, and this is why we have to deal with the realities, and the realities is many people are super far. So for me, it's not, you can't educate every user to be a crypto anarchist. Most probably many people don't care and won't ever care, right? So for me, it's about offering choices and giving opportunities, and if you need a fiat exit, so be it. I'm happy. I'm more happy you will accept cryptocurrencies with a fiat exit than you only accept Visa payments.
Interesting. So let me take a tangent here. So in the most crypto exchanges today, they're modeled out of the traditional capital markets active investor exchange with order books and flashing lights and all those things. Those are products for traders and active investors. Um, where are we leaving the passive investors, right? Miko, I think you spent some time thinking about this. Like the future of in any asset class, passive investment plays, a substantial role. And when we look at crypto, it doesn't seem that we have a ton of products for that. So is that something that exchanges should be looking at? It's something that wallets should be looking at, or how does what are your thinking in that area?
Yeah, so I'm I guess to use kind of a phrase from the popular culture, I'm less kind of aggressively binary, so I kind of, you could call me a crypto non-binary person. The mood around this is that it's important to understand that it's not DeFi versus CeFi, right? Like if you look at something like neobanking, right? So neobanking, like if you look at like Cash App or if you look at Revolut, you can buy Bitcoins and you can also access kind of what I would call legacy financial infrastructure, and that's actually meaningful, right? And to me, the thing that's interesting when you talk about this kind of tension is that, yes, like obviously something like Binance is built for pure speculation, but when you start to look at what Coinbase is offering in terms of things like staking products, right, then a passive investor can go into Coinbase, right? And and so what I mean by non-binary is that Coinbase is 100% centralized, right? But they're also offering things like staking in the sense of kind of things that mirror real world interest, right? So people are collecting interest, and that's a passive function, right? So a passive investor, as you describe them, can go to Coinbase and they can collect interest or staking rewards. They have both, right? So my point is that it's not necessarily kind of an either or. I think it's Felix said it well, which is it's about choices, and I think that people are making choices. Now, I think the idea that people are choosing only speculation, I think, is an old narrative, and it's a tired narrative, right? Because if you look at this idea of, I mentioned that the number of Bitcoins held in kind of cryptocurrency exchanges is kind of at an 18-month low. It's around 2.3 million Bitcoin, out of not, maybe 20 million. I don't know how many have been lost forever. Maybe like, Chainalysis says that maybe as many as 4 million Bitcoins have been lost forever, and we haven't reached the 21 million in terms of, continued halving. But what I really wanted to point out is that, in terms of the use cases, we don't have to have people buying burgers as the only mindset for use cases. Now, I value that mindset, and I think it's a hugely important and powerful mindset. And I'm also confident that we'll get there. Like that's going to happen. But the point is the idea that someone's collecting interest, even if it's on a centralized exchange, that's a choice, and that's evolution, and that's a passive investor. And if someone is withdrawing to an Evercoin or withdrawing to a ledger or withdrawing to a Trezor, that's also a use case, which is hodling. And hodling is really, I think it's hedging. And another use case can be, so call it fiat monetary insurance. And another use case can be thinking about it in the context of like hedging, right? So hedging means, improving your Sharpe ratio by holding something that may be somewhat decorrelated from some of the other things in your basket. So these are all use cases. So I think people who are like speculation's the only use case, I think they're really not kind of like enumerating real world functional use cases that exist today. And I don't think we need to go as far as buying a burger, which I think there's a lot of challenges to being able to do that. I think the first people that may launch something like that may be Square, because Square owns both the user side with Cash App, and they own the merchant side. So like, and they're getting really into places like Africa. And so like, Square may be the first company to do kind of mass scale retail user payment, but on blockchain or Bitcoin, but or on any cryptographic asset, on Dash for that matter. So
So
go ahead.
I spent some time thinking about this. Please go ahead, Felix.
Next time
No,
I see you
please
somewhere,
go.
Miko, I take you out for a good meal in Dash, for that matter. Come
Yeah,
to Bangkok,
yeah,
have
burger.
fantastic shops, and my belly's getting bigger and bigger only on crypto. I can promise you that. I would like to add on one point you mentioned, because you said neobanks. For me, it's also, one is the user side of things, the other one is also the business side of things. I mean, let's be honest, we are very much in an industry where many people never ever thought really about business models. And I mean, if you look at the usage and the users, we are with many businesses very far away that ever anybody is generating profit, right? On the other side, you mentioned the word neobanking, and I said before, I was working as a financial consultant before, and I was working in banks on the SAP side of things, with like core banking systems from the 80s. And at any given point in time, these banks had an army of around 50 external people just to keep the core banking systems from the 80s running, right? So we're like, I mean, this business model is also so far outdated, right? And on the other side, we have an amazing technology and sometimes cannot pull off a business model to make money with it, right? So in this sense, exchanges were the businesses who, they are the successful businesses in the space by far, like every financial instrument, right? And this is, as I see it, why also many staking services are popping up. And this is also why the competition was so high suddenly in this market, right? There more and more exchanges were popping up, and now really it's about like features, usability on exchanges. And I mean, for me personally, from my user side of things, I see a million exchanges out there and ask myself, like, why should I change? Like, what's in for me as a user? And when I look for me as a user, I look at my first trading account from stock market trading account from 1998 and still wonder why the hell were all the features I had in 1998 when I want to trade crypto, like a stop limit or trailing orders or OCO or whatever there is, right? It's kind of funny how immature we still are, and on the same time so far ahead of all the old traditional world,
I think one of the things, go ahead, Jesus.
No, I was going to say, so to the point that you were making, that the market is choosing a speculation. I think the number of products for to foment speculative behavior far surpasses the number of products for passive investors today. So what do we have? Staking, lending, and a couple of things, and the experiences are still complicated. So Coinbase is certainly taking a step in the right direction, or at least in that direction. But the interesting question is, can we make the money for passive investors smarter, right? Because most passive investors, we see this all the time, Bitcoin sitting on wallets there forever, right? And they're not earning interest, they're not doing anything, they're just there, right? And being a programmable asset class, we should be able to build smarter mechanisms for that crypto to increase its value.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that's very rich in this topic is the decentralized finance or DeFi applications. And I think DeFi applications in a lot of ways are kind of missing really positive user experiences. I think the other thing that's really important is that we still suffer from sort of fundamental technology issues like the Oracle problem, things of that nature. So, I do think we are a ways away from really being successful at that kind of like paradigm. But, I just want to really kind of continue to draw attention towards kind of this principle of neobanking as kind of a huge potential equalizer. I think the idea that retail investors can get something that's smart or can get much, much better or improved financial services, like, I think it's pretty early. I think it's early for that. And I think the positive good news is that When you look at passive investors have the potential to set the floor. And what I see happening with this kind of titanic struggle between sort of pure speculation and kind of hodling or hedgeling, is really that this kind of slower investment pattern seems to be ratcheting up the floor price, right? Which is that there's obviously support and resistance, and we're seeing this kind of 10K resistance. We're seeing quite a lot of resistance. But the point that I'm making is that all that has to happen is that people keep needing to buy the dips, which ratchets up the support. So the support level just keeps rising over time. And I call this kind of jokingly the 10-year moving average. So the 10-year moving average is actually something that it turns out is a reasonably strong effect, and it's a network effect. And I obviously it may be slower than most people want, but I think that obviously it's certainly something that's very real. And so I feel like it's an inevitability that this will continue, especially if people continue to perform this kind of I think one of the things that I wanted to interject is that Jesus is CEO of Into the Block, which is like this super amazing technical analysis resource for Bitcoin and blockchain, which you can see just about anywhere you want. You can see it on CoinMarketCap and whatnot. But one of the questions I want to point back to you actually is, how do you see this pattern of people who are kind of not selling? Like, are you seeing a lot of wallets that sort of accumulate on dips and just hang out? Like, and how big is that phenomenon versus the people that are just kind of really blitzing money in and out, like every single, tick?
Yeah, so so depending on the blockchain that you use, there are different ways to analyze that. In something like Dash, to use that example, a way to look at that is looking at UTXO's transactions, right? That allows you to see the age of certain coins, and depending of the time of the market, you can see these trends very clearly. Like Dash that have been held for 3 years, that trend, shrinking, and you can see with those or big coins that have been older than 5 years moving, and we see those trends all the time. More recently, there were two events that produced big movements. One was the March 11 crash, right? That you could literally see massive amount. We were talking about money moving out of exchanges into wallets. You could see massive amount of influx into exchanges to be liquidated, like moving from wallets into Binance just to liquidate those positions. And the other one was the halvening. And I was doing my session at Consensus the day of the halving. Actually, I had 2 hours before, and people were asking about metrics about that, and I show almost a number of metrics that were funny, saying like, look, the number of addresses that hold over 1,000 Bitcoin is on an all-time high. Like, not exchanges, just normal addresses. And people get excited about that. I said, but hold on. The number of addresses that hold 1 Bitcoin is also at an all-time high. So you can see that the big whales accumulating, but you can see the little guys are also accumulating. So we're seeing those trends like all over the place. Let me build on a point that you made about DeFi for a second, because we're talking about exchanges and a component. It's hard to talk about exchanges in crypto without talking about decentralized exchanges. Are decentralized exchanges like done? Like, is that like, I like to pick polemic arguments. So are they like gone? Are they gonna exist? Are they relevant? Are we decentralizing something that doesn't need to be decentralized? I was doing, so I teach at Columbia University a few classes every year, and a few weeks ago I was doing this class, and we got into a topic of what needs to be decentralized versus centralized. And I've been thinking a lot lately that I get the feeling that we're trying to decentralize things that do not need to be decentralized at the moment, and so I'm coming full circle on that. I'm not sure if I'm landing on the right place. So is decentralized exchanges that, like, we're just looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist?
Yeah, I want to jump in, right? Which is that, if you look at it, the whole argument of decentralized exchange is, in a way, a little bit like the argument around decentralized finance, which is it turns into this kind of like weird kind of religious discussion, which doesn't have much meaning. Because to be perfectly honest, as an exchange operator, like what exactly are you trying to decentralize? Because if you try to tell me that you're trying to decentralize the order book, I'm going to tell you that that's just a bad idea. It's an inherently bad idea, right? Now, if you want to say that you're trying to decentralize custody, then I would say that's a fantastic idea, and that's what Evercoin is doing, right? Because the idea of an exchange is the idea that you come to a place, and that place allows you to exchange, right? So the idea that you're coming to a place, you can't decentralize the place where people come to exchange, right? So to me, like the reason that's a little semantic, but the point I'm really trying to make is actually more that that's a super nuanced argument. But what I want to do is see what's happening where people are going with their feet, right? So for example, like if you talk to Alex at IDEX, like, it turns out that IDEX is sort of, it's not even a DEX, but that's not a problem. Like it's a great financial service and people enjoy using it and it's beneficial and it allows the users to maintain self-custody, as Evercoin does as well, right? But the point is that did we decentralize the order book? No. And to me, the idea of DEX is really competing for the role of BitTorrent in the media industry. So what's more important, Spotify in music or BitTorrent? Right. And so as a company, would you rather be Spotify or would you rather be BitTorrent? The reason why I like to talk about neobanks and I like to talk about Square and Cash App is because that's the model that is going to be more impactful than DEX. Like I think DEX is basically trying to become BitTorrent. And the question is, are they going to disappear? No, they won't disappear. Did BitTorrent disappear? It didn't. Right. Is it the most important thing in the music industry? No, it's definitely not. Napster disappeared. BitTorrent did not disappear.
One point I would like to add, is like it has different perspectives. It's a completely different story if you're a project owner who's trying to get listed at an exchange and has like quite ridiculous prices if you look around, and it doesn't end only with listing fees. You have to put market making and a lot of other expenses that are kind of monthly and that are very hard to bear for a young project, especially. So it has not only the user side, right? And from the user side, obviously, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to end up trading your coins without liquidity, right? So these are two sides of the same coin, and I think decentralized exchanges have their place.
Be more direct. So are DEXs here to stay, or the concept is hardly irrelevant at this point?
I think it's about the use case, and it has to evolve. I just saw one new project which says instead of giving monthly money to market making to a centralized exchange, we decentralize our own project. And if you buy our token, X% of what you buy goes to market making and to provide liquidity for our own decentralized exchange in the background, right? So this is like a use case I can see makes sense, right? So for them, they want to ensure liquidity. They want to ensure that people can buy their token for ease. So why not? This is an idea. And I think we just haven't seen the killer use case yet, and this is why most decentralized exchanges just have quite empty order books, right? And this is why, for me as a user, I have very low incentives to go there.
I'll be more aggressive and just say that DEX as a pure concept doesn't matter, and I will even go as far to say that DeFi as what I call a pure concept is also pretty challenged. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Like I have three more questions. Each one of them are very polemic. So that was going to be the next question. So DeFi, there is a lot of hype around it, and when you look at the services that are being provided, it's also questionable whether there is real value at scale. Let me pick my words here carefully, because I think intellectually it's interesting, but is that is that really a concept? Is that really a pillar of a new financial architecture at this point? Or what we need is more programmable finance and less, decentralized finance?
Yeah, I love that mindset and distinction, right? Because to me, when I see things like interest-bearing cryptographic exchange, and when I see interest-bearing crypto in the form of things like smart contracts, Like, I think that's absolutely a vital application. I think one of the risks in this kind of DeFi world is the dependency on this idea of a decentralized oracle. And I think that that's really problematic, right? Trying to decentralize an oracle is problematic. And I think the financial industry's pre-existing solution is to find a provider that is centralized and you trust that provider for the oracle, right? But other, and the reason why that works is because what you have, it turns out that code isn't law. It turns out that the law is the law. And if you believe that law is law, then you have to believe that you could actually get legal certainty instead of relying on kind of like mathematical certainty, because the thing that I think is important about financial services is that financial services really are much more about financial certainty, which is underpinned by legal certainty, right? And having rights. And so, not to be kind of the old curmudgeon, but like, to me, I think that I love kind of seeing interest-bearing crypto projects. I love seeing DeFi, and I love to see the velocity of money through primary use cases that are exciting billions of dollars of asset value, right? So to me, like, I'm a fan of everything going on over there, so I'm not a naysayer. I'm just saying that, like, people who are applying decentralized purity tests don't really understand problems like Oracle sufficiently to satisfy like me in terms of building out a real infrastructure for financial services. I just think
Okay.
that's not the right way.
Let me to wrap this up. I have one more question, Felix. I'm going to start with you, and then I have two rapid fire questions, yes or no, that are controversial. So I was saving this one for the end. So centralized exchanges, we cannot talk about it without talking about the problems with wash trading, spoofing, and all those things. So Felix, any ideas how to solve those problems? What can they do? I mean, it's subject to, this is one of the pains of my existence, right? There's all sorts of market manipulation, trading behind the scenes, was trading, spoofing. Any ideas that come to mind that just publishing stuff to the blockchains will help, right? If they actually did that, what can centralized exchanges do?
Okay, let me give you a very quick answer because I would love to add something what Miko just said. I think we from the usual financial industry, there's a lot of standards, and if they weren't there, the stock market would be the same mess like crypto is, right? So maybe it's a lack of regulation, and this is why companies like blockchain Intel and such are popping up, and are they have their space as much as I sometimes would like that they are not there, and that we have completely our financial freedom. I personally made my year, and this is to add on Miko, 2020 the year of DAOs, and for me, your previous question is very much a matter of perspective. We many times tend to be very Western focused. Me living here in Bangkok and going around in different Asian countries, I realize it's a completely scattered market. In fact, we just started our outreach in the Philippines, and to get strong there, it's a completely different world out there. And I mean, imagine being a Filipino, being an African, right? And try to get a job in the States, try to get a job in Europe. It's friggin' impossible, It's like you have to go through HR departments, you have to get a passport. We can pull off DAOs now. They're just like things in the internet, they don't care where you come from. They don't discriminate you with your passport, It's like you have to build trust, you have to show that you can do stuff. And one major thing about adoption, and also to get us out of, only having the use case exchange and trading, is people need to earn money in crypto, then it's suddenly your price reference. I assume we mostly earn in crypto, If you go out and get a hotel room, you probably think like, I don't know, 0.1 dash is an expensive cheeseburger, right? So this is exactly what I want. So I'm German, I live in Thailand, I earn in crypto. What is my personal price reference? It's Dash. And I'm happy about that. The moment you start thinking about that, going to the US is just a pain if I had to get USD out of the bank.
quickly
That's the
about the
idea.
transparency issue, we were getting pressed by the to wrap this up, and I still have two quick questions. So, what do you think centralized exchanges should do to improve transparency?
I think that what we need to see is we need to see things like blockchain settlement, right? Which of course makes them non-custodial, right? Because that's really the place where, you know, and so if you think about a non-custodial exchange like Evercoin, you know, you can call whatever you want. The order book is centralized, right? But the point, so I think centralized, decentralized is the wrong axis. You know, I think custody and blockchain-based settlement is the axis. And I think that's what we need, because otherwise we don't know what the hell they're doing back there, and it's probably bad.
Okay, so one more question, very quickly. A controversial opinion that you have about exchanges in crypto that most, by definition, most people are gonna disagree with. I'm gonna say mine. I think the winner in the exchange category is a type of product we haven't seen before. We haven't seen yet. Like, it's not what we're seeing today.
Okay, my controversial statement is Cash App is awesome and Coinbase is crashing all the time. And I think Cash App is going to win. That's my thought.
That's not controversial.
Everybody knows.
Okay, Felix.
My controversial statement would be, I like to see every payment company succeed, because I believe it's the entry for crypto to go also in there, to be an additional means of payment and not the only alternative. And I think everything has the right to be there.
You two need to check what the controversial really means. But okay, so with that, we need to close the panel. Thank you very much to Miko and Felix for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.
A great discussion there. Thank you so much to Felix and Miko for sharing your controversial statements and your insights on the cryptocurrency exchange industry.